160 billion gallons a year. And this number is going to come up a lot in what we talk about. So that's what we got to replace if we're going to replace oil. There's a lot of reasons to replace oil, but let's talk a little bit about history. Alcohol was a very popular fuel in the United States in the 1800s, before cars were ever invented. We produced millions of gallons of alcohol for lighting homes and street lighting and for heating. Alcohol lamps were the standard way people lit their homes in the 1800s. It was alcohol with a little bit of turpentine in it, which you can tap from trees just like maple syrup. And that gave it a nice bright light. And it was a very clean burning fuel. The other things people used were animal fat or beeswax for light. And those are a little less clean. They make soot, etc. Later on, kerosene came into existence with the discovery of oil, and it replaced alcohol because it was cheaper to produce, but of course it was nowhere near as clean. History books always talk about we went somewhere from animal fat candles to petroleum in one step, and that wasn't true. The city of Cincinnati used to grind and ferment 12,000 bushels a day of corn just for streetlights, to make alcohol for streetlights. So we have a long history of making alcohol here. When it comes to the internal combustion engine, the first one that was used in an automobile was by a guy named Nicholas Otto, and that's not A-U-T-O, that's O-T-T-O. And he used alcohol as his fuel in the first internal combustion engine car. Internal combustion engines have been around longer and used in industrial settings like in mines, etc., and they use coal gas and that kind of stuff. But when it was first used as a vehicle, alcohol was the only fuel that was available. Petroleum hadn't really been invented yet. That came a little later. So the Model A, Henry Ford's Model A, ran on alcohol or gasoline. By the time mass-produced cars came out, there was some oil turning into gasoline. And what that was the byproduct of the heating and lighting industry that Rockefeller started. So the stuff that was too volatile to put in oil lamps, because they'd explode and be like Molotov cocktail time, Rockefeller at night would dump into rivers when nobody was looking, basically throwing away all the volatile components of oil because nobody wanted them. Well, figuring out how to make it run in a car meant he got some income from it versus it being a waste product, and being a clever businessman, he made that possible in cities. So he started having places you could buy gasoline in cities. So the Model A ran on both alcohol and gasoline because there was more alcohol available than there was gasoline when the car was first built. If you went out in the countryside from the city and started getting low on fuel, you stopped by almost any farm and you could get distilled liquor, Applejack basically, which you could put in the car. And the Model A was a dual fuel vehicle. You could adjust from one fuel to the other from inside the cab. Didn't have to get out under the hood at all. Anybody here ever have a Model A or a Model T? Okay, so tell me about the choke.
No, it's been a while. The lever on the...
That's the distributor.
Yeah, the advanced.
The knob on the dash.
Right.
Well, the knob on the dash, okay, was not truly a choke. What a choke does is it closes a flap that restricts the air coming into what we used to have on cars, carburetors. But this wasn't that at all. This was a long rod that went right down to the carburetor, and you actually adjusted the fuel air mixture with the knob on the dash. So alcohol needed less air than gasoline, so you had to change the air-fuel mixture. And the other thing you did is you adjusted the digital distributor. We had digital distributors back in the early part of the 1900s. It took 5 digits, and you had to go ahead and do it yourself. I jumped ahead a little bit in history from back in the 1910s, the Grangers, and jumped up to there. There's something that happened in the middle. And that was Rockefeller deciding not to compete anymore with alcohol. So he went and found a group that had been around since 1854, I think it was, the Women's Christian Temperance Movement. And he went to them with one of his charity fronts, and he gave them $4 million. And he told them what to do. He said, I want you to make sure that alcohol isn't produced in this country. And they said, that's our mission. Now, imagine 1913, I think it was, at the time when this was going on, 1913 to 15, when all this was happening. You've got an all-male Congress, hard-drinking Congress, and somehow they voted for a constitutional amendment This is not a normal bill. This is like 2/3 of all of Congress has to vote on this, not to ban the drinking of alcohol, but the production of alcohol for any purpose. So that became known as prohibition. And that went on for about 13 years, during which time Rockefeller consolidated his hold on both Europe and America in terms of fuel. He wasn't successful in getting prohibition passed anywhere else in the world, but he tried. And that's all. This is all very well documented. $4 million back at that era would be the equivalent of $60 million today. Can you buy Congress for $60 million? Not a problem. You can even do it today with today's dollars, but you're worthless. So people are asking about, politics. Everything about fuel has to do with politics, and it has to do with who gets the money. And we're going to be talking more about that. But let's kind of move ahead. Let's go ahead and get into the alcohol itself. You know a little bit about the history now.